Do you love the Fae? Do you dream about playing the ultimate trickster in D&D? Do you secretly wish you were a fairy? It is Monster Week, people. And to celebrate, I am going to make the ultimate Fae character that I can possibly make in Dungeons & Dragons. Welcome to D4. Hey everyone, so here at D4, most weeks, I like to take a deep dive into character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I crunch numbers about them, I theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the right or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both powerful and fun to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you're just into theory crafting, or if you're looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm super glad you're here. So thank you for watching. My name is Colby. All right. It is Monster Week, the best week of the year. Yes, for those who are new here, Monster Week is a fantastic community collaboration headed up by the lovely Ginny D and Antonio from Pointy Hat, where they pick a monster and all of us D&D content creators make a video about it. So check the video description to see a link to all of the other stuff that my fellow creators are putting out, and go watch something from someone who you've never heard of before. You'll probably learn something really cool about the Fae. For me personally, I love the Monster Week builds. It's super fun being given a theme or a concept and then trying to make a build that fits that theme or concept the best that I can, but that still works really well mechanically, right? 2 years ago, Monster Week was all about Krakens. Here's the video that I did for Kraken Week. That was a lot of fun. And last year it was dragons, and I think I did a pretty sweet dragony build for it, right up there. But this year, yes, might be my favorite ever, because this year we're doing Fae. Now, most people are going to have awesome videos about the Feywild and about Fae monsters and about the lore behind Fae, but to me, I'm just gonna, build the Faeest character that I can possibly conceive of, who is amazing in combat, of course. So let's just jump right into the build, shall we? I proudly present D&D build number 254, the Ultimate Fairy, Fairy Swarm, the Fae Court, Faelor Swift. Oops, all fairies, Tina Fey, the Sprite Stuff. You know, my very favorite suggestion from Discord this week, thanks as always, by the way, some really stellar ones here, was from Wolfstar, who came up with every little thing she does is magic, but with she being spelled S-I-D-H-E, which, the Gaelic word for fairy folk in Irish folklore. Man, that was so dang clever. I just fear that most people won't know what the word means when they see it, or what it's supposed to sound like. So I'm actually going to go this week with one that I came up with my very self, which is rare these days, the Faeriest of them all. I'm kind of proud of that one, not gonna lie. But anyways, huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build this week. He always does this. He's so talented. If you'd be interested in checking out the other art that he does, or maybe even, reaching out to commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I will put links in the video description as always on how to do so. But first, I am super excited to tell you all about a new TTRPG whose crowdfunding campaign launches today at the time of this recording. It's called Last Arc Tactics Analog, and they are the sponsor for today's video. All right, listen up, especially you JRPG lovers out there. Last Arc is a tactical TTRPG that, yes, is a love letter to classic JRPGs like Final Fantasy Tactics Ogre and Fire Emblem, but reimagined for pen and paper. It brings deep grid-based combat. This game looks fairly crunchy in the best way, in my opinion. Sweeping storytelling and almost limitless character customization to your tabletop gaming. And I mean, check out this gorgeous artwork. The book might be worth buying for the art alone here. So the setting for Last Arc is Valdera, a vibrant high fantasy world rich with political intrigue, diverse cultures, and JRPG scale conflict. It's described as a noble bright setting, and maybe the opposite of grimdark, right? So more lighthearted and adventurous in tone, though there is still plenty of serious lore and dark symbolism running beneath. And there's actually going to be a setting book here included in the crowdfunding campaign if you want to back it at the right level, right? That's called the Atlas and Gazetteer And that's going to be fantastic for those who really want to dive into the lore and the politics of this world. Now, the thing that I'm always most interested in when it comes to a new TTRPG, right, is the character options and customization. And let me tell you, Last Ark really delivers on that front. There are over 15 races, 6 base classes with branching talent trees. A lot of your character development is going to happen via talent trees here. Then 18 advanced classes with multi-classing being wide open. What's more, there are over 300 pieces of equipment and over 80 plus spells and bardic performances to further customize your character with. Summoners can even call down powerful aeons, which just sounds amazing, and yeah, reminds me of a lot of Final Fantasy games I've played, for example. There's also a very fleshed out smithy and alchemy crafting system, letting you craft equipment, spells, and other items. Oh, and check it out. The game is actually already finished. And you know how I know this for sure? I already got my book. It actually just came in the mail today, and this is not like just an advanced copy that's just the cover, but there's a bunch of blank pages inside or anything. I mean, it's finished. It's all here. The classes, the advanced classes, the bestiary, the spells, and you guys, it looks even better in person than it did in the digital version. No question. The artwork here is incredible. I'm gonna go sit on my porch after I'm done recording today and just spend some time perusing this beautiful thing. But guess what else? While you might not be able to get your physical copy just yet, the playtest PDF of the core book is actually available to backers today. So if you back it, you can start playing immediately. That's awesome. So do yourself a favor and go check out Last Ark right now. Hit pause. I'm gonna be here when you get back. Show them some love. When you do, please use the link that I've got in the video description and the pinned comment so that they know I sent you. You will not be disappointed. All right, huge thanks to Last Ark and everyone behind it. This thing looks amazing and I can't wait to see the finished product. Okay, at level 1 for our starting class, as many of you will have guessed by now, yes, we are going to start Warlock. This is the class we will primarily be building around today, but I will say there is an argument here for starting with a level in Sorcerer, primarily for the Constitution saving throw proficiency, which would really bolster our concentration checks, but there are just a ton of things that I want to get to as soon as possible in Warlock for the build, so we're just going to go straight class here for the first little bit. Feel free to start Sorcerer instead if you'd prefer, but as for our species, while sure, there are plenty of Fae species available to players these days, I mean Centaur, Goblins, Hobgoblins, Satyrs, and more, I mean, if I'm going to make the most Fae build that I can, I think I gotta go Fairy. It is the best. And just in case your DM doesn't allow you to use old species, right? 2024 and later stuff only, yeah, well, good news. In case you didn't know, fairies were updated in the Lorwyn First Light book. They're basically exactly the same as they were in the Monsters of the Multiverse book and MOM. They just changed the spelling. So fairies are small. Their creature type is listed as Fae. They know some extra spells, Druidcraft, Fairy Fire, and Enlarge Reduce later. And then above all, yes, they can fly so long as they are not wearing medium or heavy armor. And yes, we will get a little mileage out of that flight with the build today, but it's not gonna break the build if you can't or don't want to play a flying creature. So sure, feel free to go with another Fae option here and you'll be absolutely fine. I'll maybe talk a little bit more in the final thoughts about how it might change things, especially at higher levels of play. But yeah, I'm gonna assume that we're going Fairy. As for our background, as always I say, take an old one and customize it, or just do a custom background if you can, but if you can't, Merchant will work just fine for us, though it doesn't feel super Fae-like, does it? Yeah, maybe you were like a trickster merchant, selling people magical trinkets that disappeared after a few hours, or cursed the user with something mostly harmless or something. But yes, we want to be a merchant because our origin feat kind of has to be lucky, I think, here for the ultimate Fae, no? This would let us have advantage on any D20 test of our choice, proficiency bonus times per day, and I just love it. It's like my favorite origin feat, as many of you know. As for our ability scores here, yes, I assume we go the point buy method as always and say let's start with a 15 charisma, take a +2 there, a 15 constitution and a +1 there, and then a 14 dexterity. You could swap dex and con potentially for a better armor class, but considering concentration checks especially, yeah, I think I'd probably rather bump con to 16 instead. As for equipment, we don't need a lot, just studded leather armor, right? And then maybe a light crossbow and or a simple melee weapon if we want something to use probably for True Strike at just this level. I think we really shouldn't need it much once we hit level 2, as I'll get into. But then yeah, as a Warlock 1 here, we get a single Eldritch Invocation, first of all. And the thing that I most want on this build is going to be, you guessed it, Pact of the Chain, since that lets us have a familiar, like via the Find Familiar spell, right? But of course, we get to pick better, more powerful familiars, and the one we are taking is Sprite, naturally. Sprites are tiny fey creatures. Tiny fey, Tina fey. Oh man, that was clever. Who are basically like teeny fairies themselves that can turn invisible, and so now we're like a little fairy with an even smaller fairy pet, and it's basically the most adorable thing that ever existed. And yes, using that familiar to help you like invisibly scout ahead, or sure, take the help action to get you advantage on your first attack is fun and amazing. And don't forget, taking the help action does not break invisibility, nor can enemies make opportunity attacks against those they can't see, so your little sprite here should be able to stay pretty safe most of the time. We also get Warlock spells here, and yes, True Strike might be worth having here early on especially, but of course we will also want Eldritch Blast, that most quintessential of all Warlock spells, to fire a beam, later beams, of force energy at our enemies. But beyond that, I mean, Hex is a nice way to bolster damage at these early levels, adding a d6 of damage to all of our attacks, so long as we can hold on to concentration for it, right? And then I'd probably want to pick up Armor of Agathis as well. It's a great way to bolster defense with some temporary hit points and return damage to melee attackers to further discourage them from trying to hit you. You know who really bolsters my defenses against all of my financial burdens, I suppose, my channel members and patrons. And I want to just give them a quick shout out. You guys, thank you so much for your support. It means everything to me. I could not do what I do without you, so thanks. If you're not a member or a patron, I'd love it if you'd consider becoming one. If you look down there, there's a button that says join. If you click on it or go to the Patreon link in my video description, you will learn about all of the perks that I offer to my members and patrons, including access to the library of write-ups that I make for all of my builds so that you can more easily recreate them yourself without having to rewatch the video, right? Access to the community Discord server and access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we have. I give all of my perks to all of my channel members so long as they just sign up at like the silver level or higher. And I just ask that you pay what you think it's worth and what you feel you can afford. But if you don't think that it's worth even $2 or that you can't afford it, that's fine. Watching, liking, subscribing, these are also great ways to support the channel. So thanks for doing those things too. All right, at level 2, we get Magical Cunning, which lets us recover one of our spent spell slots with just a 1-minute ritual, right? Warlocks usually only need a short rest, but this is even better, 1 minute. We can only do that once per day. And then we get 2 more invocations. Now, you might want to use those to shore up your defenses, right? Taking Fiendish Vigor for some free temporary hit points and or Armor of Shadows for free mage armor would both be nice, at least until Magical Studded Leather comes along, right? Take those if you want, but maybe if we're playing a flying fairy, we don't need to worry about our defenses quite so much. You decide. If we were focused on damage above all, then the 2 invocations that we would want here are Agonizing Blast to let our Eldritch Blast add our Charisma modifier in damage when it hits. In 5.5, you could use other cantrips for this now, right, too, but Eldritch Blast will still be the best one for us once we hit level 5, especially since then it will fire multiple beams, right? And then for the other one, not Repelling Blast to let us push enemies away with Eldritch Blast, but Grasp of Hadar to pull them towards us. Some people forget this, but Wizards of the Coast's intention, right, is and always has been that anything from 5e that didn't get updated with the 5.5 books is still usable and should work fine as long as your table can play with both, right? And the vast majority of you seem to be able to do just that. So while no, Grasp of Hadar didn't get printed in the 5.5 Player's Handbook with the other Eldritch invocations, as long as your table allows older content, whether we're talking spells, species, feats, or whatever, then yes, Grasp of Hadar should still be fine to take as an invocation. The reason I want it on this most fey of builds? Simple. It says that when we hit an enemy with Eldritch Blast, once per turn, we can pull them 10 feet directly towards us. No saving throw, no size restriction even. And since we are a flying creature, well, we can simply fly directly above our target, hit them with Eldritch Blast, and pull them 10 feet into the air. After that, they would fall, taking an extra d6 of falling damage and even land prone. Fun trick. But for those of us who can't play flying species or use older invocations, again, it's not a huge deal. An extra 1d6 of damage per round isn't going to be game breaking one way or the other. Knocking an enemy prone is pretty cool for your melee allies especially, but less so for your ranged ones, right? I'm going to assume that we can do this, and sure, we'll build around it a bit more as we go because it's cool and fun, and frankly, feels pretty tricksy and Fae-like, I think. At level 3, we get our Warlock subclass, our otherworldly patron, right? And we, of course, are going to go with the most Fae subclass of them all, the Archfey. So now we are a fairy with a fairy pet and a fairy boss. I would actually love to know the story of the queen of the court that grants you your Fae powers. As an Archfey Warlock, though, we get one feature, and it's really two. It's Steps of the Fae. This says that charisma modifier times per day, we can cast Misty Step without spending a spell slot. That's awesome, since our spell slots are so few in number, especially, right? And that, better yet, when we cast Misty Step, and no, it doesn't have to be with this feature, we just have to cast the spell, we can do one of two extra things. Either give ourselves or an ally within 10 feet of us a d10 of temporary hit points after we teleport, or force an enemy within 5 feet of where we teleported from to make a wisdom save or have disadvantage on attacks against everyone but us until the start of our next turn. That is a fun, soft taunt and can do great things to help your allies stay safe. Here's hoping that when you use it, you have enough movement to get clear from that enemy so they can't chase you down and attack you. I mean, of course, that's going to be a lot easier if we can fly, right? Anyways, we also get second level spells here. And Archfey Warlocks get Calm Emotions, Fairy Fire, Misty Step, Phantasmal Force, and Sleep, all for free. It's a pretty nice Fae-themed list. Beyond that, I'd probably want to grab Hold Person for the ultimate paralyzing lockdown on a humanoid, Mirror Image to create illusory duplicates of ourselves, making us harder to hit, very tricksy and Loki-esque, I think. And then, Suggestion is great to send an enemy running from the battlefield, or just lie down to take a rest until all of their companions are dead, perhaps. At level 4, we get our first general feat, and there are a ton of feats that I would love to have on this build, but none more than the new feat from Heroes of Faerun, Fairy Trickster. Of course, we've got to take this feat first, and it is a great one. It's going to raise our charisma by 1 to 18, and then says that when we take the disengage action, difficult terrain doesn't slow us down. It shouldn't be too much of an issue for us, of course, if we can fly, but then, best of all, it says that proficiency bonus times per day, when we hit with an attack roll, we can force our enemy to make a wisdom save, or they'll have disadvantage on all saving throws until the end of our next turn. And that's kind of amazing. This is for sure one of, if not the best feats in the Faerun book. I might like Coldcaster a smidgen more, depending on the build. I tried to make good use of both in the Frozen Fist build a few weeks ago, but yeah, this is going to be really great for you and your allies if they're often forcing enemy saves, so have fun with it. At level 5, we get 2 more invocations, and I would definitely consider Fiendish Vigor and Armor of Shadows like I mentioned before, but of course, Eldritch Mind would be great to get advantage on our concentration checks since we didn't take Warcaster for our feat, right? But the one that I think I'd want most right now, actually, would be Lance of Lethargy. This is another one that didn't make it into the 5.5 player's handbook, but yeah, if we're knocking our target prone every round, remember, it takes half of their movement to stand up, right? Lance of Lethargy slows them by 10 feet when we hit them with Eldritch Blast, meaning that if they had 30 feet of speed, well, we'd reduce it to 20 with Lance of Lethargy, and then after standing, they'd only have 10 feet of movement left. That's a pretty solid bit of control we'd be throwing down. If your allies can all do a good job of staying 20 feet away from the enemy, they'll likely not be able to do anything useful on their turn. Might as well be stunned. That's nice. And then, of course, we get 3rd level Warlock spells, and Archfey Warlocks get Blink and Plant Growth for free, and yeah, both great spells. Blink to give you a 50% chance to just basically be unhittable for a round as you phase into the Feywild, I would think. But Plant Growth is some serious snaring control. It affects a 100-foot radius sphere, that's a crazy huge area, and causes all normal plants to become thick and overgrown, forcing a creature to spend 4 feet of movement for every 1 foot they move. And if they're prone and slowed, forget it. They're not going anywhere. Be careful with this spell though, as it can affect allies too. And yeah, if you're in a place where there aren't any plants, you might have to like carry some bean sprouts in your pocket to throw out or something. Anyways, other than that, I mean, there are so many great third level spells to choose from, of course, right? Hypnotic Pattern, Fear, Counterspell, Dispel Magic, these are all great, of course, and more. But the one that I care about the most, with this build especially, Summon Fae, right? You gotta do it. My favorite of all the summon spells. So Summon Fae requires our concentration. It takes an action to cast, but it does last an hour. That's nice. And then it summons a small-sized Fae, same size as you, actually. And frankly, I love the idea of this being like your sister or your best friend, or heck, maybe even like an arch rival in the Fae court that you hail from, but who your patron has tasked you to work with regardless, right? Tons of juicy flavor and story potential here, I think. And yeah, now our trifecta of fairies is complete. We are a fairy army. Well, maybe a fairy platoon anyways. So this summoned Fae makes a decently hard-hitting attack and can also use their bonus action to teleport and then do something else, depending on what kind of mood they're in, right? Fuming, Tricksy, or the one I think we should use here, Mirthful, which lets them teleport and attempt to charm a target near where they land, right? It's just one more little form of control since charmed enemies can't attack their charmer. I mean, in reality, this isn't going to do too much for you in combat other than help the summoned Fae themselves stay safe, right? But that's not nothing, since, I mean, they're not the tankiest of creatures. But if you'd rather go Fuming for advantage or Tricksy for darkness, go ahead. I just don't think that we'll need to give our summoned Fae advantage, as we will discuss in our damage report in a minute here. Still, I just love the idea of two small fairies just like teleporting all over the battlefield all of the time, and a third invisible sprite, and just between the three of you, you're just tripping, yoinking, snaring, hitting, you know, blowing raspberries in your enemy's ears to distract them, and just generally causing mass mayhem all of the time. It is the most Fae thing ever. Don't forget, Eldritch Blast fires 2 beams now that we're level 5. At level 6, as an Archfey, we get Misty Escape. This is awesome. It gives our Misty Step 2 more options to choose from when we cast it, right? Disappearing Step says that we can go invisible after we teleport until the start of our next turn, or until we make an attack or cast a spell or deal damage. It's a really nice way to stay safe, or sure, get ourselves advantage on an attack. And then the Dreadful Step option says that all creatures within 5 feet of either where we teleported from or to, we get to choose, have to make a wisdom save or take 2d10 psychic damage. That's pretty awesome. No half damage on a save or anything, but a nice little bit of AoE against tightly packed enemies for sure. All right. At level 6, it is time for our first damage report. So let's talk about what combat would ideally look like for us here if we were just going all out for damage. I'm going to assume that since it lasts an hour, we're going to have Summoned Fae already active when combat breaks out. No guarantee of this, of course, and if that's not the case, it would be worth casting on round 1, I think. But yeah, assuming that we've got our Fae twin ready to do battle, on round 1, we'd simply fly up above our enemy, right, directly above them, and hit him with a couple of Eldritch Blasts. Let's use our Familiar to give us advantage on the first attack, and then sure, use a luck point on the second attack if we want, and if we've got him to burn, right, to give us advantage on both of the beams. Each hit does 1d10 plus 4 damage. We would then yoink them 10 feet towards us into the air, and then they would fall, taking 1d6 more damage and landing prone. I'd also plan on burning a use of Fairy Trickster here if available to try and give them disadvantage on their saves. At that point, our summoned Fae would fly up to them and make an attack with their short sword, and since the enemy is prone and our summoned Fae is melee, they would have advantage on their attack as well, right, without needing to be fuming, yeah? So if they hit, they would do 2d6 plus 6 damage themselves. After that, have your summoned Fae teleport away and attempt to charm some other nearby foe if they're mirthful to help them stay safe. So now they've gotten away from, you know, the one we're attacking and maybe charmed a second target too. Finally, we would fly down to our hapless foe, getting within 5 feet, and then use our bonus action to Misty Step away, activating Dreadful Step to try and do 2d10 psychic damage to them. Now, I usually assume that enemies have a 50% chance to make their saves against stuff like this, but considering that they might have disadvantage on the save thanks to Fairy Trickster, let's say it's only a 25% chance. It might be higher. Then again, most enemies don't have a great wisdom save, especially at this level, so it might be even lower than that. 25% feels pretty good to me, but if that's off by a few percentage points, it's not going to have a massive impact on the total numbers. Anyways, After that, we just rinse and repeat until combat is over. The only difference is that on round 4, we would be out of luck points and fairy trickster uses if we were burning one every round, right? So this is, yeah, a pretty resource-intensive combat encounter for sure. But if everything went according to plan and all of our damage landed, we would be doing 4d10 plus 3d6 plus 14 damage to our enemy every round. And if we average that over a 4-round combat encounter, against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 46 damage per round, and against a 15 AC, it would be 42 DPR. And that's really solid damage. Compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date, that's kind of bottom of tier 1, top of tier 2 territory. It's fantastic. Plus, we're getting some serious shutdown on our targets, snaring them almost to a standstill, all while being incredibly adorable with our little fairy platoon. I love it. So let's see where we can take it from here. At level 7, we get yet another Eldritch Invocation, and I mean, at this point, I just plan on taking one of the ones that I've already mentioned that we haven't been able to fit in, probably prioritizing Eldritch Mind if we didn't have that yet, since a lot of our damage here is coming from our summoned Fae, right? We don't want to drop concentration on that. And then we get 4th level spells, and Archfaes get a couple of solid ones for free. Dominate Beast to just totally take control of a beast in combat if you happen to be fighting any. And then Greater Invisibility if we want to just stay invisible even while firing away and casting other spells. Though, since it takes our concentration, it would mean one less fairy companion, right? Other than that, I would consider taking Dimension Door for an even bigger teleport for us and a friend if we really need it. Shadow of Moil is awesome. It's basically an upgraded Greater Invisibility since it makes us heavily obscured and returns damage to attackers, right? And maybe even Ralathim's Psychic Lance for some decent single target burst damage and a round of incapacitation. It's a nice 1-2 punch there. But it is also important to remember our summoned Fae attacks a number of times equal to half the spell level that we cast it at. So casting it at the 4th level is going to give them 2 attacks, and that's fantastic. It's kind of the blessing and the curse of warlocks, right? All of our spell slots are the same level. So while we only have 2 of them that come back on a short rest, at least we never have to ask, should I really burn this high of a spell slot on this spell? It's just like, yeah, that's the only option. Good to remember too for spells like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, if we picked that up along the way, which is a really solid control spell, and even better if upcast, right? Since it affects more targets. Hitting 4 enemies with it right now, it would target 4 enemies. That's pretty great control if we need it. Especially if, the AoE for like Hypnotic Pattern or Fear or something doesn't quite work out and we might accidentally hit friends, etc. At level 8, we get another general feat, and though I would love to just bump Charisma and get it to 20, there are too many other feats that I want first. First of all, in the name of being the most Fae character ever, I mean, we gotta take Fae Touched, don't we? So we have Fairy Trickster and Fae Touched. I mean, this is by no means a must-have, but it does bump our charisma by 1 to 19 and then gives us 1 more use of Misty Step per day for free. Now, maybe you don't need that. Maybe you only tend to have 1 or 2 combat encounters per day, but I like the idea of having just 1 more use in case we really need it. Plus, it lets us grab a 1st level enchantment or divination spell that we can also cast once per day for free, and there are a ton of great choices to choose from here. If you want to be a better support, go for Bless. It's a great buff all game long, though yeah, the concentration requirement is a bummer. I'd probably be more likely to take Command if we wanted a little more concentration-free support. And yeah, like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, casting this at the 4th level would potentially make 4 targets flee, which might keep them out of the fight for a couple of rounds if they're melee and, the space you're fighting in is big enough. Or, sure, ye old Silvery Barbs, as long as you're not part of the Silvery Barbs mob. And if you are, you should totally make your membership official by buying the t-shirt, which you can find in my merch shop, which I link to in the video description. You could actually pick up this shirt there as well if you really wanted, me as Bob Ross painting a D&D character sheet and saying, happy little fighter dip. But yeah, I mean, Silvery Barbs is a fantastic spell to force enemies to re-roll successful attacks or saving throws, plus give a friend advantage. And I think it feels, pretty trickstery. At level 9, we get the Contact Patron feature. I love this addition to 5.5. It simply lets us cast the Contact Other Plane spell once per day, specifically to contact our, Fae Queen patron, right? And when we do so in this way, we automatically succeed on the save required. So, no bad things happen to us as a result. Some really nice utility and a great way to bring your patron more into the story and plot of your game, right? We also get yet another invocation here, and again, I'd take one of the invocations I've mentioned thus far that you haven't been able to fit, but others to consider would be investment of the Chainmaster to buff our little sprite, mostly for defensive purposes. I don't really love the idea of having them make an attack, even if this would let them do that with a bonus action. I would rather that they stay invisible so that they can more easily stay alive, but if you really needed that extra bonus action attack, you could. I'd also consider Repelling Blast if you haven't taken it yet. Sometimes, pushing enemies around can be more effective than pulling them up if there's a good cliff or like spike growth nearby, yeah. PYF here, pick your favorite. And then we get 5th level spells. Archfays get Dominate Person and Seeming for free, so now we can dominate beasts or humanoids, nice. And Seeming can bring some nice disguise-based utility. Beyond that, I'd consider Hold Monster, of course, to paralyze anything now, and Synaptic Static is probably my favorite AoE burst damage spell in the game. It has a solid debuff rider with that damage, right? It lowers their attacks and their ability and concentration checks if they fail their intelligence save against it, and most enemies are going to fail their intelligence save. But at level 9, it is time for our next damage report. Since last check, not a lot has changed for us tactics-wise, though our Summon Fae hits harder and more often, and we've got another use of Luck and Fairy Trickster, plus a bunch of additional utility control and defensive potential. But at this point, averaged over 4 rounds against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 64 damage per round, and against a 16 AC, it would be 58 DPR. And that's a solid increase of about a third more damage, right, give or take, which is not bad. At this level, compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date, that keeps them kind of in a similar place, bottom of tier 1, top of tier 2, and that is very, very good. And yeah, again, considering all the fun, trickstery, control, and shenanigans we bring to the party, we're just living our best fairy life right now, no doubt. But at level 10, I think it's time to leave Warlock behind. You don't have to do this. There are plenty of great things in Warlock for us still if you want to stay. Some fun and useful subclass options, better spells, a 3rd spell slot in a couple of levels, right? More invocations, but if we're chasing more damage, now that our spell slots are capped, Warlocks never get higher than 5th level spell slots, remember. And we've got what I think of as our most important invocations and fun flavor. I think we'd get more mileage out of veering into, no, not the Fey Wanderer Ranger. Sorry, I know some of you were probably expecting and maybe even hoping for that, but there's not a lot of synergy there for us. Plus, it makes us a lot more mad, right? Multiple ability score dependent. We just don't need much of what Ranger can offer us, frankly. So no, I am going Sorcerer instead. Yeah, I'm turning this into a good old-fashioned Sorlock, and I think it works really well thematically, too. Arguably even better than Fey Wanderer would, but we'll discuss that in a minute. One thing to note, if you are planning on doing this, it is definitely worth considering starting as a Sorcerer at level 1, like I mentioned, since, yeah, Constitution saving throw proficiency, that'd be really nice for a concentration check, so feel free to go that route if you want. But now that we're here, as a Sorcerer 1, we'd first up get Innate Sorcery, which says that twice per day, as a bonus action, we can enhance our Sorcerer spell casting only for 1 minute, increasing the DC of our Sorcerer spells by 1 and giving us advantage on our Sorcerer spell attack rolls. Now, fortunately, Sorcerers are charisma-based casters too, so we'll need to think going forward, right, about which Sorcerer spells could really benefit from this, potentially. So, for example, now that we get 1st level Sorcerer spells and cantrips here at this level, right, while sure we'd want to grab Shield and absorb elements, I think above all, for defensive purposes, we might want to get Tasha's Hideous Laughter, even if we took it as a Warlock spell so that we could potentially enjoy a higher save DC on it, right? If we thought we'd be using our concentration for some control once in a while. So yeah, just keep that in mind. At level 11, we would be a Sorcerer 2, and that means we get Font of Magic, our sorcery points. We get 1 sorcery point per Sorcerer level that we can use to either create more spell slots for ourselves or, sure, cannibalize spell slots for sorcery points too, since we might want more of them in order to use our meta magic options, which we also get at this level. we get two choices, and for the first one, yes, I'm taking my favorite Quicken spell, so that we can, by spending 2 sorcery points, cast a spell that normally takes an action as a bonus action. This means we could now cast Eldritch Blast with our action, and then sure, Quicken another Eldritch Blast with our bonus action if we had the points to spend. Or sure, Quicken Summon Fae if they weren't already summoned at the start of the fight, right, and then fire off Eldritch Blast with our action. So long as we're only casting one spell with a spell slot on our turn, we're fine to cast more. And while sure, we were already potentially getting some damage from our bonus action via Dreadful Step, that feature doesn't scale. And now that we're level 11, Eldritch Blast fires 3 beams for 1d10 plus 4 each. And it's just better damage, except versus like enemies with a really high armor class but a low wisdom save, right? Plus there might be an even better spell for us to be quickening here in a minute, but more on that later. As for the other metamagic option we can pick here, go ahead and pick your favorite, PYF, but I definitely consider Subtle Spell to cast something without components, always a nice option to have, or Careful Spell so we could throw out a big AoE and guarantee that our allies aren't affected by it, whether that's Synaptic Static or Hypnotic Pattern or whatever. Also worth considering, Twin Spell, right? This lets us essentially upcast things like Tasha's Hideous Laughter or Command to affect more targets without having to spend the higher spell slot. If we did this using our 5th level Warlock spell slots, we could essentially get a 6th level version of either of those out of it, and that's potentially pretty awesome. Anyways, PYF. At level 12, we would be a Sorcerer 3, and that means we get our Sorcerer subclass, and I mean, what do you think we're taking as this character who's supposed to be as fey as possible? There's really only one option, right? Wild magic, of course. Listen, the description of the subclass says, your innate magic stems from the forces of chaos that underlie the order of creation. Perhaps you were blessed by a fae. Heck yeah, we were. I don't think it's any kind of role-playing stretch to just say that as we've been using the magical power granted us by our fairy queen, more and more of her power has just been like seeping into our essence, imbuing us with her chaotic nature. And at this point, it's difficult to say how much of our power is coming from her and how much is now just infused into our very fairy selves. And I mean, wild magic, as far as I'm concerned, this is the most Fae-like subclass in the game, even if it doesn't have Fae in the title. It's just all hijinks and chaos. It's perfect. As a wild magic sorcerer, then, we get 2 features. First and foremost, yes, wild magic surge, which says that once per turn, when we cast a sorcerer spell, specifically with a spell slot, specifically, if we roll a 20, we get to roll on the wild magic surge table, which means we roll a d100 and then cross our fingers and hope that we don't accidentally turn ourselves into a potted plant. But of course, deep down, we all kind of secretly hope that's exactly what happens, because we are nothing if not creatures who crave the ridiculous. More likely than not, though, something good will happen, like we get to deal max damage on a spell, or get to take an extra action, or we get to deal lightning damage to a bunch of enemies, etc., right? It's great fun, and potentially really powerful, but I'm not going to try and account for it in any way when I crunch numbers. My favorite feature, of course, as someone who likes things that are actually dependable in my games, is the Tides of Chaos feature that we also get here, which just says that once per long rest, we can just give ourselves advantage on any d20 test. But this ability resets if we cast a sorcerer spell with a spell slot, but then we have to, oh no, please no, twist my arm, roll on the wild magic surge table, right? So yeah, most of you hooligans are just going to be casting sorcerer spells from now on, regardless of how optimal it may or may not be, you wild and crazy fairy, you. Speaking of, we do get 2nd level sorcerer spells, and while Web is a nice control option and Vortex Warp feels especially fitting for this master of teleportation that we've built to now teleport others around, not just ourselves, right? The one I most want here is, yeah, efficient but maybe boring old Scorching Ray. This spell is just a solid workhorse. It's not too flashy. Many would argue not worth spending a high-level spell slot on, but it fires 3 beams of fire plus 1 more for every level we upcast it, and yeah, we could use a Warlock spell slot here to make it fire 6 beams. Each of them does 2d6 damage. Alas, we don't get to add our Charisma modifier to that damage or anything, but it's still potentially good if we have higher spell slots we want to burn for it, right? Pun intended. More on that in just a minute. First, at level 13, we would be a Sorcerer 4, and that means we get another feat, and I am going to take Spell Sniper. For a ranged spell slinger, this feat is really solid, and in fact, if I weren't just trying to take everything with Fae or Fairy in the title first, I probably would have taken this at level 8, if I'm being honest. So sure, feel free to do that instead of taking Fae Touched. It raises our charisma by 1, so we've finally capped it at 20 now, and then gives us a slew of additional benefits. First off, our spell attacks ignore 1/2 and 3/4 cover. That will be huge at some tables and hardly matter at all at others, right? It also says that any attack spell with a range of over 10 feet gets an increased range of 60 more feet, meaning that Eldritch Blast now has a range of 180 feet, dang. But then, most importantly, for this build, it tells us that ranged spell attacks made against enemies within 5 feet no longer give us disadvantage on the attack rolls, like they typically would, right? Why is that important? Well, let's discuss in the next damage report. Alright. Since last check, our tactics are going to be a fair bit different, I think. Here's what I would like to do if I were just going all out for damage. Start off the same way. Fly above your enemy, fire 3 now Eldritch Blasts at them, lifting them up into the air at the end, and then having them fall prone, right? Between our Familiar, our Luck Points, and now Tides of Chaos, we should have no problem getting advantage on all 3 of those attacks. At that point, we'd fly down to them and either quicken Scorching Ray at the 5th level if we've got the spell slot, and I'll assume that we do just on round 1, or at later rounds, right, another Eldritch Blast. Since they're prone, and we have Spell Sniper, we should be making all of these attacks with advantage as well. Nice. And I really love that image of almost like this cute fairy suddenly becoming this point-blank executioner, right, holding out their hand at their poor prone target, just like... terrifying. Our summoned Fae would continue to make their melee attacks and then teleport away afterwards, as always, meaning that between their attacks and our own double rounds of blasting, we would be making 11 attack rolls against them with the Scorching Ray anyways, or 8 if we were just quickening Eldritch Blast. Now, one potential problem here is that we'd be either ending our turn next to them, or more likely flying away from them if they weren't dead, and yeah, provoking an opportunity attack. I'm not too worried about that though. First off, because as a prone enemy, they'd have disadvantage on that opportunity attack, and we have the shield spell. Second off, because even if they hit us, we could teleport away with our reaction thanks to Misty Escape, and either go invisible or sure, do even more damage to them thanks to Dreadful Step. I'm not going to assume that's happening, but if and when it does, we'll do even more damage than I'm about to report on, though of course it would come at the cost of our own health, so use with caution. Anyways, if we average all of these things over a 4-round combat encounter, at this point, against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 104 damage per round, and against a 17 AC, it would be 96 DPR. Woo-wee! Broke the century mark at level 13, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Man, why are my Monster Week builds always among my hardest hitters? I wish it were Monster Week every week. Well, maybe the Draconic Cleaver last year didn't really fit that build so much, but they were great if you could get 2 targets standing next to each other. Anyways, yeah, we are packing a mean punch, sitting comfortably in tier 1 territory now with all the delicious fairy fun and flavor. All right, let's see how it looks in the end game. At level 14, we would be a Sorcerer 5, and that means we get Sorceress Restoration, which lets us regain spent sorcery points after a short rest once per day equal to half our Sorcerer level. And then we get 3rd level Sorcerer spells. There are plenty that Warlocks don't get access to that I'd love to have. Maybe Fireball, probably Catnap for a quicker short rest, right? If we've got our Summoned Fae out and we do that, or maybe use our, Warlock ritual to get a spell slot back, we could be firing multiple Scorching Rays against targets in combat and just really start blowing stuff up. I definitely want Slow for another great control option, and again, thanks to innate sorcery, you might even want to take Fear and Hypnotic Pattern here, right? But go ahead and PYF. At level 15, we would be a Sorcerer 6, and that means we get Bend Luck as a Wild Magic Sorcerer. This says that when someone other than us makes a D20 test, any D20 test, we can use our reaction and a sorcery point to raise or lower that test by a D4. That's really pretty dang potent. It's not exactly cheap, but it could be like a deal breaker or maker on a really important role, and usable offensively or defensively. It's quite a strong feature. At level 16, we would be a Sorcerer 7. That means we get Sorcery Incarnate. This says that if we have no more uses of innate sorcery left, because we only get 2 per day, right, we can spend 2 sorcery points to activate it. Better yet, for most of us, I think, while innate sorcery is active, we can spend 2 meta magic options on the same spell, which means we could, say, quicken and careful cast a hypnotic pattern or like a synaptic static. Really awesome. And we get 4th level sorcerer spells. Again, PYF here, I'd probably be looking at stuff like Polymorph and Wall of Fire, but there are lots of great options. But then finally, for us, at level 17, we would be a Sorcerer 8, and that means we get another feat. And at this point, I'd probably be looking to just shore up our defenses via something like Resilient Constitution or Resilient Wisdom if you started Sorcerer, right? Or maybe just straight up increasing our Constitution by 2, or maybe even our Dexterity for that matter, for a better armor class. Also, though, don't forget about Mage Slayer. Getting a free automatic save against a failed Wisdom, Intelligence, or Charisma save per short rest, especially at this point in the game, could be massive. But yeah, PYF. Don't forget though, importantly, Eldritch Blast now fires 4 beams every time we cast it, and just in time for our final damage report. Since last check, not much has changed for us tactically. We've kind of just gotten a little bit better at what we were already doing, and picked up a lot of potential utility, defense, and control power. We would now have 2 4th level sorcerer spell slots if we wanted to blow those for 5 Scorching Ray beams, but with Eldritch Blast now firing 4 times and adding our Charisma modifier to each blast, it actually hits just as hard as a 5th level Scorching Ray, right? That we were potentially using just on round 1, so good news. Even if we were going all out for damage, we can hold on to that 2nd Warlock spell slot. Maybe to cast a powerful control spell, maybe if we need to resummon our Fae, or maybe just cannibalize it for more sorcery points, right? As for damage, over a 4-round combat encounter against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 123 damage per round, and against a 17 AC, it would be 113 DPR. A solid, 20% increase or so since last check, but compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date, it's going to be more like middle of tier 2 at this level. We've scaled some, but not quite as much as, those tier 1 builds we're scaling in the damage department at least, and are having so much Fae fun while we're at it. So let's get into some final thoughts about it all, shall we? The tier score for this build, if you take the damage they do at all of the armor classes that we calculate for at each of the 4 damage reports, just average it into one big number, we get a 71.93, and that's going to put them right near the top of tier 2 compared to other builds that I've done to date, meaning they are hitting harder than most of the builds that I've done for 5.5 so far, and that is impressive. Especially with as much flavor as we are bringing here, I think, and with as much control and versatility and mobility as well. Now, some of you might be wondering if we wouldn't have been able to eke out a little more damage if we would have started concentrating on Spirit Shroud over Summon Fae, especially at higher levels. Answer is not really, but it depends. The biggest problem with Spirit Shroud is that the damage that it deals requires you to be within 10 feet of your enemy, right? And that would have prohibited us from being far enough away to pull them 10 feet into the air and then have them fall prone, right? And we needed them to be prone at those higher levels in order to continue to have advantage on our attacks once we flew up to them and fired into them at point blank range with our quicken spell. Not to mention, giving advantage to our familiar. Without either that advantage, or if we wanted to forego the extra Spirit Shroud damage on the first attack in order to still pull them up into the air, right? Then the damage we get from concentrating on Spirit Shroud really doesn't outweigh the damage from our summoned Fae. Especially considering that on round 1, we would be giving up additional blasts by having to use our bonus action to get Spirit Shroud going, right? That said, if you're not playing a flying species here, then Spirit Shroud becomes a lot more worth considering, I think. The 10-foot range is a little problematic. You are kind of squishy, and it's not as easy for you to stay out of harm's way if you're not flying. But yeah, just for straight up damage, you're going to get a little bit more mileage out of it, but you're also going to want to make sure that you're using innate sorcery so that you can still have advantage on your second round of blasts, making sure that that's sort of always Scorching Ray, right? It feels a little clunkier going that route to me. You have to use your bonus action, 2 times in order to sort of get firing on all cylinders. But it's a nice alternative, for those who can't or don't want to play a fairy. But above all, the main reason that I don't want to go Spirit Shroud on this build is because it would have broken the theme and the flavor that we were going for, being this amazing platoon of fairies so that we could be the most Fae build ever. And I really love where we ended up, just sticking with the concept here. I think this would be so dang fun to play in-game. Your sprite is invisibly flying around, pulling people's hats down over their eyes, right? You are zipping around, pulling enemies into the air, knocking them prone, blasting them to pieces, teleporting all over the place, while your best fairy friend is doing the same, but with their short sword, charming baddies while they're at it. Plus, wild magic surges all the time. It's absolutely the most mayhem and Fae-ish chaos I've ever built, and I think it would be a riot. Just be careful, if you're going to play this, to do your best to streamline your turns as much as you can. Get really good at knowing what your attack bonus is and rolling those attacks quickly, because you're going to be making a lot of them. Remembering what your damage is, remembering what all of your fairies are doing every round so that you can quickly roll the dice, add the numbers. There is definitely a risk with this character of bogging down gameplay a bit, right? If you can keep it quick and light and effective, I think your whole table will fall in love with this little Fae platoon. I know I have, and I hope that you have, but that's the build for the week. Thanks for watching. I love you guys. Thank you for all that you do for me and for this channel. It means so much to me, and I'm deeply grateful. I hope you have a fantastic day and a great Fae week. And if you don't, I sure hope that you'll hang in there. Please don't give up. I believe in you. I do. I hope that you will do good and be kind and stay safe, and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Do I have to tell the story of 1,000 rainy days since we first met? It's a big enough umbrella, but it's always me that ends up getting wet. Every little thing she does is magic. Everything she do just turned me on. Even though my love before was tragic, now I know my love for her goes on. Man, I haven't listened to The Police in forever. I need to remedy that immediately. That's such a good song. And that was such a good title. She, spelled Sita. Not nobody. There will be some people who are up to date on their Irish folklore and or are maybe from Ireland or, maybe even the UK or Scotland or something. And to all of you, I say hello. But don't forget, taping, and don't forget, it's a nice way to, is the character, Hey Siri, put yourself in airplane mode. You just had to sneak one last message in before you did that, didn't you? All right.